Joining me now to talk about today's topics are Ryan Dawkins and Kevin Caffrey. Thank you, gentlemen, for coming on the show today.
Thanks, Tim.
First of all, Ryan, I'd just like to start out, if you could introduce yourself to the audience, please.
Yeah, my name's Ryan Dawkins. I graduated summa cum laude here from Colorado State University. I'm a lifelong resident of the Loveland-Fort Collins area. After college, I went to graduate school and got a master's degree in American history from Ohio State. And then in 2008, I moved back here to work on the Betsy Markey for Congress campaign. Now, I just have my own website and blog where I talk about politics, do policy analysis, and talk about the politics of Northern Colorado.
Very interesting. Kevin, can you introduce yourself?
Yes,
please?
my name's Kevin Caffrey. I'm retired from Union Pacific Railroad Company. I've lived in Fort Collins since 1978, and I'm currently the president of the Northern Colorado Labor Council, which is a kind of a group of the unions in this area, which encompass trade workers, heating and air conditioning, grocery store workers, that type of thing. And so we get together to promote labor in this area and to represent them.
Very good. Today's topic of the show is called the 99ers. And let me give you a little quote of the way they're described as. These are the unemployed workers who have exhausted all of their regular unemployment insurance, all emergency unemployment, and all state extended benefits. A maximum of 99 weeks, hence the term, depending on the unemployment rate in a given state. Here in Colorado, at the end of July in 2010, there was 16,184 unemployed people that fell into that term of the 99ers. And they're saying in the coming months that it could go well over 20,000. Now this is important to me, and the reason I picked this topic for today's show and brought you two gentlemen on is because I don't like the fact when I hear politicians say that the unemployed are lazy, they're spoiled, and they're just not willing to take a job. Ryan, how do you feel about that?
Well, I mean, I think it depends on context. I mean, I agree with you. There's something kind of disconcerting when you hear politicians talking about, people as being inherently lazy or unwilling to work when you have an unemployment rate of 9.5%. So context matters. Sure, there is academic and economic research to indicate that an overextension of unemployment benefits could lead to dependency. But that only happens all research indicate that only happens in periods of economic prosperity. You can't really expect someone to get a job when there's no jobs available.
Mm-hmm. Well, Kevin, let me talk with you, is because in the past, you have been unemployed from your job and you collected. I mean, did you feel that you had no self-worth? Was the money, did it help or hinder you?
Oh, it definitely helped. You need that to make the transition period. The thing that's going on now, the sad part of it is with these 99ers is the fact that the job, it's not temporary, and the jobs aren't coming back. When I got laid off seasonally with the railroad, I could always count on, it usually wouldn't be more than a month or two, maybe 3 at the most. And it was early on when I had little or no seniority with the railroad, time at work. And so as I progressed and had more time with them through, it was a union job and seniority and that type of thing, I could count, I knew I wouldn't be laid off as much. And then later, working for them, I wasn't. But what's going on now, the disparity that's going on now, we've got, highly trained technical people, a lot of HP people are not being laid off, because to me that's a temporary term, means you will be called back. Mm-hmm. Now they're being terminated and they're calling themselves being laid off, and they're not going to be called back unless, in a temporary status. So it's really affecting this area. I see it in Northern Colorado, where there's a lot of unemployment and people don't have full-time primary paying jobs where they can live the middle class life. You can't do that on minimum wage and just above minimum wage. You're not going to get ahead. You just can't keep up with what it costs to live in this area.
Well, unemployment unemployed insurance benefits. Mark Zandi, chief economist for Moody's Analytics, he says that it works, that in context with the multiplier effect. Ryan, what's your take on that?
Well, I mean, you're right. I mean, the multiplier effect is a huge term in terms of economic theory. I mean, it's this idea that, you know, what's the best way to get people spending again, and the multiplier effect. You know, they lay out, you know, in terms of economic stimulus, what are the most efficient and effective ways of getting people to spend that money, to turn it over, to make investments, so that you get the biggest return on that $1 you spend, right? And I know with respect to unemployment benefits, whether it's, and we mentioned this in the last show, whether it's Paul Krugman, Joseph Stiglitz, Mark Zandi, or even the Congressional Budget Office, they've all said definitively that the most efficient and economically effective way of stimulating the economy is through unemployment benefits and unemployment insurance benefits. You know, because that's money that's going, they're going to take that paycheck and it's going right back into the economy because it's money that they need to spend.
Well, let's talk about the Bush tax cuts, because they're ending at the end of 2010. They were in there for 10 years, and now they're coming to an end. And a lot of Republicans and everything are saying we need to get those. We need to extend them. That if we give the money to the, let's say, the wealthy, then it comes down to the rest of us. Ryan, how do you feel?
Well, I mean, I think first of all, I just have to say I think there's a certain amount of hypocrisy when on the one hand you have, you know, the GOP leadership, people like Mitch McConnell and John Kyle, you know, voting against the extension of unemployment benefits, you know, because it adds too much money to the deficit. Well, at the same time, you know, saying that they'd be willing to extend the Bush tax cuts, which is going to blow a $700 billion hole in the deficit over 10 years. Mm-hmm. So I mean, I think there's a certain amount of hypocrisy there. And in terms of economic stimulus, in terms of effectiveness, I don't see any evidence to indicate that, you know, tax cuts are going to be any more effective or even equally as effective as other forms of stimulus.
Well, here's the thing that I'm curious about, because they say that it'll help the economy, but the numbers don't match up. Just give you a quick, it was out of the stimulus bang for the buck from Mark Zandi when he did a testimony that it said that make Bush income tax permanence is 32 cents. In other words, if I put a dollar out there into the economy, I'm going to get back 32 cents. Make dividend and capital gains tax cuts permanence, 37 cents. Cut in corporate tax rate, 32 cents. Now, and here's the numbers that Mark Zandi used, that again, that he was the chief economist that advised Senator McCain in 2008 on his presidential campaign. And he said that extending unemployment insurance benefits is $1.61. In other words, I put a dollar out there, I get $1.61 back. Food stamps is $1.74 return, you know, on my investment. General aid to the state governments, $1.41. Increased infrastructure spending, $1.57. Kevin, I think you were talking something about, you had read something about how the infrastructure is falling apart so much that the amount of water that is being broken from water mains. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Well, it was a real intriguing show. I just was channel surfing one afternoon, and I came upon a show, and they were talking about the infrastructure in this country. And one of the remarkable things, because in Colorado and the western part of the country, and well, possibly the world, water is a huge issue, especially in Colorado. We know that. And then when I saw this, they mentioned that across the country, there were like 250,000 water main breaks per day in the country. It was just huge, the amount of water that was wasted. And yet we talk about, you know, only water your yards on other alternative days and that type of thing, where it's a drop in a bucket savings. And if we would go and use this stimulus money, and maybe even a second, Ryan talked about this before, that, you know, the stimulus wasn't big enough, and that was, you know, a noted economist said that. Mm-hmm. And I think that if we would put that money into infrastructure rebuilding, I mean, a lot of our infrastructure, especially in the waterworks.
Infrastructure rebuilding.
Yeah, it's
not
old.
Just repaving roads.
Absolutely.
But, I mean, real serious projects.
Absolutely, you know.
Yeah, like, let's build a second Red Rocks. That's what I want.
Well, yeah. Well, not only that, you know, just if you look at the the infrastructure from the water standpoint and the loss that's out there, millions of gallons, billions possibly, that if we would, and these are heavy construction projects, where it's going to employ a lot of people. But here's the thing, it's not socialism, it's an investment. Because we save money, we're conserving on water that way, and we get a return for our money. And I think that's what Mark Zandi was referring to, where if you invest it directly into the people and that type of thing, the multiplier effect, it comes back to you. And I think that's a positive, and plus, it's long lasting. Look at how, if you do a waterworks project, I know we need one in Fort Collins. There's a water area that's I'm trying to think, I'm at a loss for words, but a area where they infrastructure place that needs to be redone, and we don't have the money for it. And look at how we'd get the return on that. So I just think that's a great way, something that we need to revisit.
Well, and we can't forget about the state governments either. I mean, the other component back in July when Congress finally did pass the unemployment insurance benefit extension, coupled with that was also additional aid to the states. Because I think we mentioned this last week when you go ahead and you have to end up firing or laying off hundreds of thousands of teachers, police officers, firefighters and things like that, and in return you hire a few construction workers, for the stimulus, for the sake of stimulus. So you have to give that attention to the states as well.
Yeah, priorities.
And, and then even go back just a few weeks ago, the $26 billion aid to reinforce, public pensions and Medicaid. I mean, those are important contributions that we have to be aware of as well, and they have to be considered in addition with or in tandem with the extension of unemployment benefits.
One word I'd like to talk about real quickly as you were talking, Ryan. I noticed where you said that maybe teachers, police department officials would be fired, and then you went back and said laid off. But let's make it clear, gentlemen, that it is a permanent, with them. And I want to make sure that we say this here, because I know Kevin understands this, that
Sure.
Coming from where he worked, is that when you were laid off, at some point in time you came back. But these are permanent layoffs. These are jobs that go away, that will not come back, that these people will not take a little hiatus and then come back. So I just want to get that point across. But Kevin, I wanted to talk with you about this issue, is that this is something that's interesting. Second quarter GDP in the United States was revised down to 1.6. In Germany, second quarter GDP came out at a 2.2, the highest that they have had in 20 years. Now, one of the interesting facts that I found out as I was doing my research on this is that German companies that have 2,000 or more employees, 50% of the board of directors are made up of the workers of that company. I think that's very interesting in a context, and I'd like to get your comment on that.
Well, can you imagine if that would have happened in the financial sector, where you would have had people that their jobs were at stake, and they would have been on these boards? Would the type of lending, the risk taking that they took, and their jobs were at stake? Because in the financial sector, when we had the meltdown and that type of thing, or even GM, for instance, sure. where GM went bankrupt, Chrysler went, into Chapter 11. And they had to reorganize, that type of thing. What we needed to, can you imagine if you would have had GM employees, rank employees that actually do the work,